Hello, hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good morning. How you guys doing? I think we're live. Hang on a second. Here we go. Hey Neil, Harry Hype, how's it going? Good to have you guys here. Give me just 1 second. I just want to finish setup here. All right. So sorry about the late announcement yesterday about today's stream. I mean, if you come here regularly, you already know. But I just forgot to share the stream session for today. But anyway, here we are. All right. So I think I'm kind of done with the character that we've been working for the past 4 streams, I believe, 4 or 5, 4 streams, I think. So today we're gonna start something new. Hopefully, you guys like what I have. To be honest, I haven't prepared anything, but hopefully you're gonna like what I want to do today. So I haven't prepared anything in the sense that I want to keep it quite, open and fresh. So my idea is to work on a kind of like a space, like a alien gun or alien weapon, something like that. Something very organic, very sketchy, but hopefully show you some techniques and how I would approach something like that. And the reason I want to do that is because, to be honest, I don't do that as much. So I want to try to, have a go at it, and hopefully get some good techniques out of it, get some good practice out of it. So again, because I don't do much weapons and that type of assets, or hard surface for that matter. I'm not the greatest one, so there's gonna be a bit of a trial and error, I guess. So let me show you. I think I already loaded. Here we go. So this is just a quick sketch that I did to, to sort of get the ball rolling. Let me just bring in my Epic pen. Here we go. So that I can show you stuff while we're at it. Yeah, so as you can see, this is meant to be like an alien gun. I don't know if you can see what it is, but if I point it out, maybe you'll realize. So here's the trigger. Here is kind of like it's a horrible color. It's kind of like what the alien or the person would hold it, and this is where the bullet, so the ray will come. That's basically what this gun idea is. So you see, it's very sketchy, very organic, and that's kind of like what I want to try to do. It's not something that it will be perfectly, hard surface, perfectly modeled. I'm hoping to use a bunch of different processes as well to show you different techniques. So Modeler, we do some Sculptors Pro, maybe Dynamesh, some primitive project primitive would be a good one. I'm just looking at the different shapes of this gun and just thinking ahead of what we could do. Maybe some retopology tools to create the base of it. So anyway, that's kind of like the idea. So if I had to sort of break down this into pieces, and again, this is just a rough idea to give me kind of like a direction of where I'm going, but along the way, just things can change, and that's why I like to separate the process. And hopefully you'll see this when I start. But I don't like to, if I don't have a perfectly defined concept that I need to follow, or that I need to recreate exactly the same, I don't worry about topology. I don't worry about any technicalities. I just use a bunch of different things, whatever works, put it all together, and then once it's approved, when it's ready, like it doesn't really matter if I have live booleans or Dynamesh. It doesn't matter. Once I have something that works, then I can move to the other stage when I can worry about like, all right, how I'm gonna resolve this into a kind of like a production environment. But we're not gonna get to that. So I'm just gonna show you the process of how we create what's called, or what I assume is the or what I understand as the concept sculpt, basically. So once you have the concept sculpt and it's approved, the design and everything, for example, if you're in a production pipeline, then you move on into the more refined assets with the topology and all the edges and the beveling and all that, which to me is it's obviously part of the process, but it's not as fun as designing and creating something from scratch. Anyway, so I'm just gonna give you an idea of what I would aim for. So let's say the primary shape would be, or like the original, the base shape would be something like that. Maybe we can include this bit as well. All right, and it will go something like this, and this dotted line is kind of like it's occluded basically. Right, so that would be like the first, or like the base shape. That's it. So and obviously whatever is inside. So once we get this blocked in, we can move on to other parts. Like, again, as I said, I haven't thought this through too much, so I'm just doing this as I go along. But I'm trying to separate this alien gun into the main objects or the main pieces, so that we can tackle them a little bit easier. So maybe this one is just one on its own, and maybe let's do a couple more. Maybe this one here. So this one could be the one that cases this kind of like a sphere thing, which I don't know what this could be, but some kind of alien dial or whatever. Doesn't matter. Yeah, and the rest are just pretty simple, primitive. This could be just a cylinder. This is another cylinder, like a more squashed cylinder, I guess. Some planes or cubes, and this just little sears, insert meshes could be even, and holes, and the rest is just like live booleans or whatever it is. Doesn't really matter at this point. Again, so this all this mumbling and writing or drawing on top of the sketch is what I did in like maybe 4 streams ago when we started with the character, which is just do like a feature mapping, just thinking ahead what would be the plan of attack to create something like that. All right, let me just bring in the chat because I don't have it here. All right. Hi Rodrigo, Comics Legend, good to have you here again. Reminds me of District 9. Oh yeah, I can see that. Somehow, like, maybe if it is more like embedded into the arm, I guess. Canguro Viajero. Hola Pablo, cuando emites en español, por favor. Canguro Viajero is asking when is the stream in Spanish. So I've been thinking about that. I gotta speak with Kyle, but I'm thinking we'll see how we go. But maybe give me 1 second. I'm just gonna put this in silence. It's annoying. Yes, I'm thinking maybe next month. I might do like 2 in English and 2 in Spanish, or something like that, just to see what the response is. I'm just trying to help as many people as I can. So if there is a good demand for it, and people are interested, definitely is something that I can do, not a problem. All right, so let's start creating something. Like I said, I'm gonna start with this kind of like a blue shape. So what I'm thinking is, because it has I mean, we could start with similar, but because it has like an irregular shape, or a more organic shape, we could do, I'm thinking what would be good. You know what? I'm gonna show you something cool. Let's start with some kind of like retopology tools. Let me know, by the way, if the sound is okay. Alright, so I have a plane here. Just gonna change to a different material. And this plane, what I'll do is I'm gonna scale that kind of like to fit in with the texture, or with the image that I brought in, which is this one. Oops. Right. So let me just change the opacity. So all I'm doing here really is positioning this image using the spotlight, just so that it's facing the plane that I created there. And let's go ahead and subdivide this. So I'm going to turn off the Subdivide Smooth, which for you guys should be here, Geometry, Subdivide Smooth. And what this does is just prevents ZBrush from subdividing and smoothing the surface. So it's just going to subdivide it. So I'm going to do that a few times. Delete lower, and I think we have plenty of resolution. I'm going to go for the standard brush, turn off CAD and enable RGB, so that it is just a paintbrush. So I'm just painting. Oops. I'm going to change the size of my brush. So yeah, so I'm just painting with polypaint. Right. So now that I have that, I'm going to bring in my spotlight, and I'm going to select paint here at the top, select one of the first ones, right? And I'm going to increase my spotlight radius. So you'll see as I click on this one is the 1, 2, 3, 4th one from kind of like the middle line. This one here, is it the 4th one? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4. Right. So as I click and drag around, it just increases. It's kind of like the brush size, but in a way, it's just the reach of the spotlight. So I'm going to increase that a bit. Then get out of the spotlight, pressing the letter Z in my keyboard, and you'll see as I hover over, it's kind of like a little window over the image that I created. So I haven't painted or anything. I'm just like literally seeing through a specific part of the image, and then I can just, because I have this standard brush set to no intensity in the Z or in the depth, so it's not sculpting, and I have RGB enabled, can select any color really, and just click and drag. So I'm essentially transferring exactly that plane that I had into this plane, just as a quick polypaint. So I'm just polypainting, nothing else. Now you can also import the image as an image plane and use a whole bunch of different options to set it up. But I don't know. I think this is just an easy one, and it's a piece of geometry with the information embedded into a polypaint, and then we can use the technique that I'm going to show you, which I think is easier. All right. So let's bring back this spotlight. I'm gonna increase the opacity so that it's not opacity, and reduce the spotlight again, and that's it. I'm just gonna place it here in case that we need it, or you guys want to see it later. Cool. All right. So now we have this plane, and we can get started with with the mesh extraction and all that. Comics Legend is asking, if you do one in Spanish and one in English, will they repeat the same concepts? Yeah, that's the thing that I was thinking. Because if I do one in English and one in Spanish, it would kind of like make sense to repeat some stuff, but then it might become a little bit boring to watch again the same thing if you are regular. So we'll have to we'll have to see. Maybe do a single project, but do two parts, two different stages of the processing. I don't know. I'll have to think about it really, but I've been thinking about it, so for sure. All right. So with these, I'm just gonna delete the lower subdivision so it doesn't bother us. There are a couple of things that you can do. Again, I'm not going to worry about the topology or anything like that. This is not the stage that I would worry about any of those technicalities as of yet, because things are going to change, and it's easy to manipulate the design and design in ZBrush if you have some kind of if you don't have the restrictions of like a very clean topology that you have to maintain. Right. So having said that, there are two ways that I'm thinking we could approach the initial shape. One would be with the masking. So we could potentially select the mask lasso. Hang on. There we go. And then we can mask, an area like so. Right. And because we have polypaint, we can just turn that off. Oops, select white color, and see this is kind of like the shape that we're getting from the mask. And then we can extract that mask and do a quick zero measure and get us started with that. However, I want to start with something a little bit cleaner, and then we can tweak it and destroy it along the way to make it work for us. But so I'm not gonna use that one. Which again is something else that you can use. I'm going to show you something more interesting though. So I'm going to append a C-sphere, select that C-sphere, and I'm going to move it out of the way. So just selecting the move brush with the C-sphere selected, I'm going to push that down. Cool. And I'm going to turn the floor so that I don't see those lines in there. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that you guys can see a bit better. Cool. So now that I have the C-sphere selected, because I have the C-sphere selected, I should have a few more options here at the bottom of the tool palette. So I have the adaptive skin, the C-sketch, rigging, topology, and all that. And that is because of the C-sphere. So if I change to a polymesh, so I'm just going to press my my arrow key to go up in the subtools. You'll see there's I lose all those options. So those options are basically limited to C-spheres. That's why I appended that one. So with that one selected, I'm gonna go to topology, and this is kind of like what I would do as that's kind of like my retopology workflow. I would append a C-sphere and then just do it manually. So from here, once you have that selected, just click Edit Topology, and that basically allows you, if you have the draw mode selected, I'm also going to reduce the size of my brush significantly because I'm not interested in seeing the size of the brush, and I can just start placing dots and connect them. So I'm going to start with a corner like here, right? Oops, I have symmetry enabled, so I'm thinking, let me see. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. I'm gonna do it again just because I think we need to do something before we start with that. Otherwise it's gonna be harder. Okay, I'm gonna select the plane and I'm gonna click on Unify. Do the same thing with everything. I'm not sure if that's gonna be the problem, but alright, edit topology. Alright, here we go. So all I did there was just unified everything so that I can start creating these dots. Alright, so now that I have these dots, I'm gonna hold Ctrl, and holding Ctrl you will just snap to whatever point you want to start with. So I'm gonna select this one. You'll see the green little circle around there, and then click Am I doing anything? Yep. Alright, so I have this. Hopefully you can see sort of what I'm doing. Maybe with the black and white is not the best way to do it, but anyway, I selected the move brush, and I'm just gonna move these points and repositioning those. Now the great thing about the topology in ZBrush, it automatically snaps to the surface. So because this is just a plane, these points are gonna be moved along that plane. And okay, so I'm gonna try to position these ones in kind of like in a way that makes sense. Alright, something like that. Gonna go back to draw, and holding Alt, you delete points because that one wasn't working. Hold Ctrl to select another one to start with, and I'm just gonna do something like that. I mean, this is not the greatest topology, but again, I'm not worried about topology. We're not gonna worry about that at all, or at this point. Just want to have something cleaner to start working, rather than having a what was the other thing? The extrude or the extract technique. Alright, I'm gonna try to do this one faster because it's a really boring process to watch. So again, all I'm doing is just placing dots, using the move tool to repositioning them, and these dots are going to be they're going to be aligned with the surface of whatever is on the canvas, which in this case is just a plane. Alright, hold Ctrl to select another point to start with. So you'll see this is very rough, but at least it will give you an idea of maybe a different way to start something like this. Alright, so I'm gonna go over this part because I'm gonna try to get to this point. So one thing we can do is hold Ctrl here to select this point to connect something. Let's see, maybe here, and then here, there, and somewhere around here, and then connected here. Right, so we have this massive, end gun that has more than 4 points. We just need to clean that up, but that's easy. We just go with the same tool. Oops. Just need to be careful that you select the right point that you wanna start from, and you know which one is selected because of that little. So I think I'm going over the chat, but basically the red kind of like circle around it, that's the one determining where you're starting to place, or what's the kind of like the original point where you want to connect points from. Don't know if that makes sense. So basically, if I select this one, this is the point that you will start connecting other points to or from. And that is just selecting holding Control and clicking to select that. Oops. Alright, I'm just connecting these dots here. It's a bit messy. But anyway, so this is kind of like the idea, and then I can just go with the move brush, and once I have this placed, I can just tweak the positioning, and this is how you can see as well some errors like this one. In this case, it's just easy fix. We hold Alt, delete that one, then Control click from this point and click on that one, and that connects them, or not. Let's do that again. All right. Cool. So with the move brush now, trying to reposition this in a way that makes sense. And again, this is gonna be like the base, or the base geometry, and then from here we can do other process like extract and extrude and use the C modeler or just Dynamesh it, whatever we want to. We just need something to start with so that it's easier. This is gonna change rather than having a sphere or something, you know, something that resembles more the shape of it. Cool. So once you're happy with this initial state, we can go to adaptive skin, and we're gonna change the Dynamesh resolution to 0. By default, this is not my preferred. I mean, ideally, this should be always at 0, but the default is Dynamesh at 256. So ideally, you wanna, for this type of thing, you wanna have that at 0. And what that means is that when you do the preview and create the adaptive skin, you won't have any Dynameshing process. Basically, it's gonna be exactly what you see here, these polygons. So if I go into solo mode, you see these are just it's kind of like a mesh or a wireframe without anything. And I can just click on preview or press A on your keyboard. Let me just turn off polyframe, and then you'll see the shape, right? Pretty messy, but it's also because the density is set to 2. So it's ZBrush is showing us this mesh with a subdivision, like a preview of subdivision at level 2. So we can reduce that to 1, create preview, and then we get exactly what we have created. And yeah, so that's pretty much what we need. I'm just looking at this, and there's a couple of mistakes or errors here that didn't connect properly. So these triangles here, but that's again easy fix. Let's go to preview. Let's get out of solo mode, and I'm gonna go into the draw mode. Make sure edit topology is still on, and I'm gonna hold Alt, delete that point. And what was the other one? I think it was just that one. Cool. And then hold Control to select that point, connect that one, select that point, connect to that one. Right. I think that's it. Let's just move these ones a little bit. And I think we can connect these, it's just, this is going kind of like over this area, but we can connect it and then worry about the rest. This is something that if you're doing this process and you find that you're using the move tool and then you cannot move a point, you click and there's definitely nothing happening. This is something that I don't know exactly why that happens, but the workaround or the way to fix it is to clear the mask. Because again, I don't know why this happens, but ZBrush kind of like does a masking, an auto masking somehow into the points. So if you clear the mask, it will clear that mask. The mask, you cannot see the mask, but it's there, and that's what prevents you from selecting the points or moving them around. So if you find that that's the case for you, just try clearing the mask, even though you don't see anything, and that should fix it. Cool. All right. So yeah, so let's go into solo mode. Let's click preview. So yep, I'm happy with this. Again, it's just a plane, and then we can click on make adaptive skin, and ZBrush is going to create a brand new tool just with this bit. Okay. I also have double enabled, that's why I can see it from both sides. If you want to spend the time, you can go ahead and clean this up even more before you create the adaptive skin. I'm not going to worry too much about it, but I do want to have like a straight line here, here, and here. Maybe here as well. So we can use the Gizmo 3D for that. So I'm going to hold Control and make sure that the select lasso is selected, and I'm just going to select this part, invert that selection of the masking selection, bring in the Gizmo, click on this location icon, and that should, hang on, that should give me, there we go. That will basically center the pivot to this unmasked area, which are just these points. So that's now very easy to just click on this scale. It's not very obvious, but I'm just scaling everything and sort of like flattening everything together. Cool. So that's an easy fix for that one. The same thing here. Invert the mask, bring in the Gizmo, center pivot, scaling the x-axis in this case. Let's do the same thing here. Center pivot and scale that. All right. Now for this one, because it's not a you know, a straight line or like a perpendicular line to any of the axes, we can go ahead and select that or mask that, invert that selection, do the same process basically. But once we get to the flattening, we can just hold the Alt key, and that basically unlocks this little icon, and we can rotate this freely, like resetting the pivot. So I'm gonna try to keep that line in line with the Y axis here. All right, and then click, and that's how I would do it. All right, cool. So that's the base. That's the base for our gun. So now what I'll do is I'm going to use the C modeler, and I'm going to determine the thickness of this piece. And again, this is going to change over time, but you know, to get us started, that's something good. Hopefully we can get the blocking of all the shapes today with different processes, so you can see, you know, in case you want to follow along, you can do that. And for the next stream, we can start, you know, fine tuning and detailing and doing all those sort of things. Nukfunu is asking, what are we doing? We are attempting to do kind of like an alien gun. Here, oops. Oh no, I think I lost. Hang on. Here we go. Oh, I think I've painted the image. I don't know how that happened. 1 second. Let me just import it back in. Here you go. Cool. So we're trying to do something like this, like an alien gun, and we just started with the primary shape that kind of like holds all the rest of the pieces together. Yeah, so that is the idea. Cool. So let's go ahead and continue with that. Like I said, I'm going to try to block everything in today. I'm going to select the C modeler. I have a couple of macros here, but it's basically it's a very simple macro that selects the C modeler, selects the material, turns on polyframe, and which we already had, so it's not a big deal. Now the good thing about this is that this is currently a single polygroup, so we can hover any face, make sure that we have polygroup all, so that we can target all the polygroup or the entire polygroup. QMesh is selected, and then we can extrude that. So I'm going to click here and extrude that, and this is how I would determine the thickness of that piece. Okay, so I think we start with something like this, and then we just add more thickness wherever we need to, or yeah, this is kind of like what I want to start. And obviously there are parts that are going to be thicker, and in fact, let's go ahead and do you know, add a bit of variation in the thickness in different areas. So I'm going to turn on dynamic, so just to see how all of this gets subdivided. You know, it's very smooth. Doesn't look like anything right now, but you know, we'll get to it bit by bit. So with dynamic subdivision enable, that is kind of like a preview of the subdivision. So we can see, you know, if we add an extra loop here, this gets sharper and things like that. And we also can go to, well, we can actually mask points and then use the Gizmo 3D to just repositioning them and things like that. This is going to be kind of like, at this point it's fine to leave it as it is, but again, I'm probably going to re-Dynamesh some bits and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get out of this one, and I'm going to start adding some loops just to add a bit of thickness. Just to determine the areas where I want to have more thickness before I do the thickness. So I'm going to right click on an edge, make sure that insert is selected, and this is kind of like a nice loop, so it's going to start here, and I believe it's going to go all the way here, which is fine. So I'm going to, yeah, so I'm going to do something like that. Something like that is fine. Alright, so I'm going to undo all this, because it's actually easier to create all these loops before we add the thickness, right? So that when we add the thickness, we have both loops and in both sides. In this case, it's just doing it all around, but there might be areas that you won't have those. So let's just undo that. It's a couple of steps anyway. There we go. So it's still a flat plane. Let's add the loop that we wanted. So something around there. And I'm going to add a couple more here. And another one here closer to this edge, so that couple maybe, just so that it's sharper. And sharpening this area as well. Cool. Dynamic. Alright, maybe something around here. Whoops. Something around there. And around here. Just, I'm trying to sharpen certain corners, but not making it super hard surface, because again, this is kind of like an organic type of thing. Alright, maybe something around here as well. So you'll see this is like an awful topology that we're destroying even further after we did the manual placement of these polygons, but again, it doesn't matter, it's just to have something to get started. Cool, so I think this one is working fine for the purpose of what we need. So let's go ahead and add the thickness. Something like that. I think maybe that's too much. All right, something like that, and we have the same loops and the same topology on both sides. All right. So the reason I did that before the thickness is because now we can go ahead and select specific polygons. So one thing I'll do is enable symmetry, and maybe what I'll do as well is select my Gizmo 3D, turn off symmetry first, center the pivot, reset everything. I'm resetting all these with holding the Alt key, and I'm gonna rotate, holding Shift to rotate 90 degrees exactly, so that it's pointing in this direction, and click on this house icon. Actually, yeah, no, that's fine. All right, so now if I enable symmetry, I should have symmetry in the x-axis, so I don't have to worry about, you know, duplicating things on each side. So that's kind of like what I wanted. Let's go ahead and hold the Alt key with the C modeler selector, and I'm going to target or tag specific polygons that I want to add thickness to. So I'm going to start with maybe these ones. So click and drag, and these ones as well. Click and drag. All right, so I'm just thinking this could be a thicker area, maybe this one as well. Just a little bit more, and you'll see on the other side is also tagging those polygons. And now we can go ahead and, because we already had the Q mesh selected, so hovering over a face, we have still the Q mesh selected and polygroup all. The polygroup all wouldn't matter at this point because we tagged the polygons that we want to extrude, and we can click and drag and add a little bit of thickness here, which is great. All right. Some of the really handy tools about the Q mesh or the C modeler in general is that you can kind of like connect points like this. So maybe this area, you want something a little bit more, a bit softer, the transition. So something you can do very easily is you can select this, hover over the face, right click, and this time I don't want to have any polygroup, so I'm going to do one at a time just to show you. So a single poly, that way I only target this one, and I can just click and go up, and you see go closer to the next set of poly loops, or sorry, the next edge is just going to snap to it, and it's going to merge these two together. That's really cool, and obviously you can, you know, it's creating a little bit of a thickness here, or an extra loop, and you can control all that from here, from these modifiers. So you can align half step, quarter step. Anyway, you can play around with these ones, but basically this is what this thing allows you to do. So that's how I would go about doing this part of the process. Maybe here, I don't know if I want this let's just turn on dynamic to see how it's looking. Turn off polyframe. So it's adding a little bit of, thickness, which is what I want. But yeah, maybe let's connect these ones as well. All right. I think that works. And again, because this is not going to be the end topology, doesn't really matter. Cool. Let's go ahead and do something similar around this area. Maybe do the same kind of like snapping to this part just there. And then I'm just thinking what would be best. All right, I'm going to tap those polygons. I want to add a little bit of a curvature here, so I'm going to click and drag. Oops, for one. There you go. Click and drag, and that will snap all of this area. Cool. And then we can use the same process if we wanted to add a bit of a kind of like a ramp between this new section and the one below. But I don't mind this actually. I think it's looking all right. Again, if we subdivide this, it's not going to be the greatest, but I think it's looking good. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for this area. So I'm going to select a few polygons here. Maybe leave this one as a gap and then push this. There. So you'll see we have some variation. And then we can go ahead and maybe connect these ones. Maybe not all the way. Maybe that's interesting. Just leave those bits open like that. I don't know. Maybe not. All right. So you'll see this is a very easy technique. As in, you start with something cleaner that is not perfect, but it just gives you some starting point, and you start using the C modeler to fix things around and manipulate volumes and extruding and all that in the Q mesh. And then once you're happy with kind of like this is looking, then you can just go back and Dynamesh the whole thing and tweak it, which is what I'm going to do really. Again, this is not the final topology or anything. This is just a base or a starting point. Cool. I think that might be it for this initial the initial piece. Let's just subdivide that or Dynamesh it. Sorry, not Dynamesh it. Dynamic subdiv. Turn that off. All right, so you have some nice shapes, and all these will be even refined even further once we Dynamesh it and tweak this even further. All right. So now that we have this, let's do a quick save just in case. I'm going to copy subtool and go to this working file. Paste subtool, right? And I'm just gonna, instead of rotating this one, because this is the one that we need in the x-axis, I'm just gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna select the plane and I'm gonna rotate that 90 degrees, and there we go. Also, we probably, I think we just, yeah, we move this out of the right place. So I'm just gonna repositioning this kind of like that. So now if I turn transparency, you'll see how this piece that we created is kind of like creating this area. That is the idea. Now let's go ahead and do maybe this one here. with the same technique really quickly, because it's kind of like more sharp angles, and maybe this one as well. And I'm going to show you something cool that you can do with the technique that I just showed you, which is that you can work on separate pieces at once and then just create it with a single click. You create multiple pieces, and then we can just go with the more organic bits and some other similar stuff. Again, just try to block everything today, and then we'll try different stuff next week. Cool. Yep. So let's get out of this one. I'm gonna go to the C-sphere. So you'll see the C-sphere at the moment is, it has these polygons because we left adaptive skin preview on. So I'm gonna turn that off, and I'm gonna go to topology and delete topology. So it's gonna delete all these points and just leave one there. Alright, so now we can go ahead and maybe turn this off. And I'm just gonna select draw, and I'm gonna try to replicate this, kind of like do the same pattern here. So click once, click. I'm just clicking here different parts of this plane. And the reason by the way, the reason I turn off this piece is because, as I mentioned before, this retopology tool will take into account whatever is on the canvas. So if we have this, then it will snap to that new volume. So I just want to make sure this is kind of like in a plane. Alright, I'm going to try to do this one faster. Hopefully you all can also see that how fast it is to do retopology in ZBrush. I know there are like some really great tools to do retopology for different stuff. I just find that the tools in ZBrush, once you get the hang of it, it's just so fast. Okay, so yep, so that's kind of like this shape, maybe a little bit more here. Cool. All right, so we have that piece. So what I was saying before is that we can have, you can keep drawing different pieces all at once, and then just when you create the adaptive skin, you just repositioning them and separate them. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna create this piece really quickly. One way to do it is you can hold Ctrl and click in one of the points that are closer to the next part that you want to create, and then start from there, right? And then you just delete the connection of these points. So you can just click here to create a new point in the connection, and then hold the Alt key, and that will delete that connection. So there's separate polygons. If I go into solo mode, well, you can see it there, but it's basically separate meshes now, living within the same subtool. All right, so I'm just gonna finish this up as well. And I think this one can go all the way here. Again, all these parts that I'm creating are going to be sort of hidden, or just not hidden, but covered by other pieces. So it doesn't really matter. All right, and maybe something. Let's just complete this shape here. I was gonna do that little bit only, but you know, we'll do everything and then we just clean it up a bit. Cool. So maybe let's go to the move brush and see. In this time I cannot move things, so just clear the mask. That should give me what I need. All right, so I'm just repositioning these bits. And again, I'm not too worried about the topology. This is not very well thought or anything. I'm just moving these points out of the way because I just realized that probably we don't need any of those just to describe this shape. We'll get rid of those in a second. Alright, so I'm going to go to draw, hold the Alt key and start deleting these points that we don't need, and reconnect these ones. There we go. Yeah, so I think that's cool. That's fine. That's what we need for this part. I want to do one more here, this bit. So, but I want to have it separate. So I'm gonna try to follow exactly the same pattern here, but not connect these points. And this one is connected. All right. That's it. This is a little bit offsetted, but you know, we'll put it back in, and I think we're good. We're good with this base. So let's do the same thing. I'm gonna preview that, make sure that everything looks all right from this. That's good. Cool. So yep, let's go ahead and make adaptive skin. We can go to our mesh, turn off C sphere, and here is our mesh. Now I'm not gonna edit this one here because then I don't have the reference, but I'm gonna copy it, copy the subtool, go to my working file, paste subtool, here it is. And what I'll probably have to do is, let's go ahead and give it some thickness first. So I'm going to solo mode, C modeler, hover over the face, make sure polygroup all because this is all polygroups, and I'm gonna give it some thickness. Alright, so something like that is fine. I have to be careful with this. I just noticed something. So you'll see this bit, and this is something that is a result of doing the trick that I just showed you, which is creating multiple pieces at once. The problem is, or what I can see the problem might be, is that I'm extruding these ones in one side, or like in one side of the normal, and this one for some reason is being flipped, right? So you'll see I'm having two different thickness. So before I do that, I'm going to turn off double, and you'll see that what happens is that this piece is the face of the normals are facing one way, right? So these ones are facing this way, and the other piece is still here, but because I turn off double, then the normals are facing this way, so I won't be able to see any of this. So what I need to do first is, well, I need to separate this, flip the normals so that they're consistent, or do it one at a time, right? So I think the easiest way will be what I just said. So I'm gonna go to my select lasso. Whoops, there we go. Select this bead, and I'm gonna split hidden. So split hidden for you guys should be on the split palette here, on the subtool palette, split hidden, this one. So now these are two separate meshes, or two separate subtools. So with this one, I'm going to flip normals. This is the one that was giving us a problem. And let's go ahead and where's C modeler. And again, I'm just going to click and extrude this just to give it some thickness, maybe not as thick as the other part, something there, right? And we need to center this, and the centering is pretty easy. We can just select the move tool and click this go to unmask area just to make sure that it's centered within that volume, and then we can press this house icon. Now the little house icon is just going to center into the center of the world of the space. So we just need to go to a side and reposition this based on our sketch. Cool. All right, let's do the same thing with the other one, with the other piece. Go into solo mode. I have the simulator selected. Let's go ahead and click and drag, so just to add some thickness. And you know what? I want to have different thickness for these two pieces. So one thing we can do is, because they're not touching or they're not connected in any way, they're just simply in the same subtool, we can go to auto groups. For you guys, should be under the polygroups, auto groups here, and we can right click on the face, and because we have the polygroup all selected, it's just gonna take into account a single polygroup, or yeah, one polygroup at a time. So first I'm gonna do this one, give it a thickness like so, and then I'm gonna do this one, click, and give it a different thickness. I haven't let go of the click, and if I don't let go of the click and press Alt, it's just gonna give me a different polygroup. I can just cycle through different colors. So this is just a visual thing. Maybe that's too much. All right, so that's good. Let's go ahead and separate these pieces again. So same thing I did with the weird one that had the flip normals. Select this, split hidden, go into solo. So now we have all these pieces that we can start working, that we can start using. There we go. So let's go to the move brush, just in case I select the wrong one. I want to select this one, and I want to center that because they're all offsetted. You can do a couple of things actually. So if you don't want to offset what I did with this other piece, that using the gizmo and repositioning and all that, you can actually mirror these areas. So I think that might be a better approach for this. So I'm going to select this one, use the Gizmo 3D to just move this in place, kind of like in there, right? And I'm going to use the mirror and weld option. So you'll see it creates like a line in the middle as well. And center that. And I think this, let's go to the sketch and go into solo mode. I think this one should be thicker than this other part. So let's get out solo, go to this one, and I'm just gonna use the X axis just to scale that like that, and that kind of like makes a bit more sense. Hang on a second. There's some kind of noise coming from somewhere. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's the phone is off. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Oh, you know what? Hang on a second. Yeah, I think I'm running out of battery. One second. Cool. All right, I'm just plugging in my control. All right, so I think we're making good progress. I think this part will be too thick, but we'll deal with that in just a slate. Right. So there's still some weird noise coming through. I don't know what that is. Might be the microphone. Oh, it's getting annoying. Cool. I'm going to center this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to scale it, move it this way, and mirror and weld, and just reposition that in place. Kind of like that, and use the move brush. This is a simple move brush, large brush, to just tweak it a bit. Alright, so we need a little bit of thickness here at the top, just so that it connects or goes inside the other area. So we're gonna select the C modeler, and I'm gonna tag these, whoops, hold Alt and tag these polygons. Make sure polygroup is all is selected, extrude that up. Alright, so there we go. So we can turn this off now. And yeah, so we're making some progress with this weird thing. Doesn't look like much today, but as long as we can manage to block in the rest of the shapes, we're in a good shape. Alright, so let's see if there is any questions in the chat. And then we move on. Nice, good luck. Thanks, Nukunu. Hey, attentive Slug, how's it going? Lindsay Jordan, waiting on ZBrush to download now. Great, so you just got it? New project, yes, so we're working on a new project. I think something drastically different from the character. Just try new different things, see how we go. Hey Bjorn, Comic Legend is the paste. Alright, hang on, there's a weird noise, I'm sure. Can you guys hear it? There's a weird noise, or I'm just going nuts. Here we go. That's it. Sorry about that. There were a couple of. So I got these things. They're really cool. This is completely off topic. What are they? So they call New Hera. It's one of those earbuds things. But they're really cool. They have like a microphone, and they have a few settings in an app, and they allow you to modulate the environment with the music and everything. So you can just tap on one and then have a conversation. It kind of like enhances your hearing in a way. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that was the thing that was beeping because it's running out of battery. Sorry about that. Alright, so where were we? Sounds like feedback between headset and mic. Yep, so that's kind of like what it was. Hey Steven, how you going? How's it going, man? Smart artist. Smart. You know what? Like every time that I read your nickname, I think it's just as in a smart artist. A smart artist. Which is totally cool. Smartist. There we go. Sorry, so what was the question? Sorry, Comic Legend. Is Space Subtool same as a pen tool? Yes. So the difference between, let's say, a pen and insert is that a pen will just paste it right at the bottom. The insert one will paste it right in between or below the subtool that you have selected. So with paste, it's kind of like the same thing. It just pasted. If you have this one selected, it will just paste it below that. That's kind of like the idea. It's a serendipitous combo of my initial and artist. Serendipitous. So this is kind of like the word. It's just a word in English that I would never use. Serendipitous. Fair enough. All right. So let's go ahead and do the other parts or the other bits. So the more organic ones. So let's go ahead and tackle this one here at the top. So we've done pretty much the big ones. I want to do. Let's do something like this one. Then we can do. I guess these ones still are a little bit hard surface in a way. Hmm. We'll do them with a different technique so that show you something different. And then we do this one. So 1, 2, 3, and then we can move on to the kind of like insert meshes, like these ones. This one as well. And I think we're good to go to start refining stuff. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna go into solo mode. And I'm gonna go ahead and append, actually not solo mode because I need to see both things. So I'm gonna append or insert, doesn't matter, anything, a cube, and scale that down. So because I need to see the plane as a reference and this cube as well, what I can do is just turn off the rest of the stuff. There we go. And I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to convert that into a Q cube or a quick cube. And for you guys, that should be under the initialize sub palette here, this Q cube. You have a few options. Q cube is kind of like my way to go. And I have that here as well. You can also do a sphere if you wanted to. But Q cube is fine. And this, I mean, anything in the initialize tab here will basically turn whatever subtool you have selected into a Q cube or whatever you click on. So when you insert, it could be absolutely anything. Doesn't really matter as long as it's a primitive 3D and you can convert it to that. All right. So this one is going to be. I'm going to scale that into. You know what? I'm going to start here with this area here like that. All right. And then let's go ahead and hold Control and mask this side of the polygon. Invert that mask. Bring in the gizmo, center that to the unmasked areas, and I'm going to hold Control. And with the gizmo, we can automate some of the process that you would do with the C modeler. So I'm going to hold Control, and that will extrude that bit. Maybe we can go not all the way, just there, right? Clear the mask, and we can do the same thing. At this point, I think I'm gonna use C modeler. It's gonna be easier. I'm gonna make sure that I have symmetry enabled, so that it does it on both sides. I'm gonna select this with Alt, so tagging that polygon. Push that down like so. All right, and then I'm gonna select these ones. Extrude or Q mesh this like that. Let's select this one. This looks really weird, but hang on a second. I'm just gonna block in the main shape and then just tweak the rest. This is very, very rough, but hopefully you get the idea. Alright, so this is kind of like a pixelated version of what I want to do. But now that I have this, I can go with the gizmo. I'm gonna put it out of the way, and with my mask lasso. Come on, mask it first, then bring in the gizmo and to the unmask area. Go to the unmask area. Why is it not going? Let's do it again. Mask invert that mask. Bring in gizmo. This is weird. It should go to the unmask area. Go to the unmask area. Alright, doesn't matter. I mean, you can either do this or you can use the move tool, right? If you're going to use the move tool, just be careful because we have this center line. So one thing you can do is just delete that. So I'm going to delete edge complete, that one. So now if I use the move brush, I'm going to be moving just the points like so. So that's better. That's gonna be easier than what I was trying to do. Alright, so I'm gonna start pushing these. Obviously I have perspective off. Alright. So I don't mind going over this area because this is probably going to be just a Boolean object. destroying all that. Cool. Let's go to the C modeler again. I'm going to extrude this one. Whoops, tag it first. Extrude maybe a couple. Tag it again and extrude that again. And with the move brush, just reposition all these bits. I don't know if I'm going to use this part of this mesh anyway, but it's good to have it there, and we can get rid of it if we don't need it. Alright, so that's good. Let's go ahead and turn the other meshes on so that we can see what's the relation of this area. So it's clearly needs to go on top or like over it, maybe not too much. Yep, something like that. That looks fine. And again, we can probably at the end just mesh all these together, and then I want to have like something very organic. So there's not going to be these type of hard edges anyway. So again, it's just setting up the base, but giving you some ideas that if you want to work on a kind of like a cleaner, starting with a cleaner topology from the beginning, this is probably one way that you can go about it. I'm not doing anything very clean at this point, but because I know that the end result is going to be very smooth, and it's going to be a Dynamesh. Really, it's going to be a sculpted. It's going to be a hard surface sculpted in a way, very organic. Cool. Let's go ahead and do the other part or the other beat, which, you know what, the other one we can, we can get away with duplicating some of the ones that we already have and then move them along. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to duplicate that. Go into solo, or not solo. This is another way that you can use isolate things. So let's say that I only want to keep these two. You probably know this, but let's say I want to work on this one, but I want to have the reference of this one. You can do two things. Now with the split screen, you could work with one side of the screen having everything together and the other one in solo mode. But in this case, I actually want to work with a reference in the same screen or in the same canvas. So one thing you can do is hold Shift, click on this, and then just enable the one that you want. This is it's a pretty basic stuff, but so if I hold Shift, I just turn everything off, so I can just select the ones that I need. It's kind of like a reverse engineering the solo mode, I guess. Alright, so what I want to do with this, turn polyframe on, is use maybe the slice curve, and this slide curve is really good when you're using this type of process, because it allows you to create to cut the mesh in different areas really quickly. So I'm gonna hold Ctrl Shift, click and drag, and I'm gonna do something like that, and let's go into transparency so that we can see a little bit better what we're doing. I'm also gonna cut it around there and around here. Cool. So I think that's about it. That's about it, really. Maybe something with the spacebar you can move the entire curve. Oh, all right, something like that. So now that we have all this mess, again, I'm not worried about the topology. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna hide some parts. So I'm gonna hide this one, hide this one, hide this one, and I just have this bit left. Let's go into solo mode. There's some areas. All right. I feel like it's because there's a polygroup here that it's not working. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to assign a polygroup there. All right, let's do that again. just select the areas or the polygroups that I want to keep, which are these ones. Yep, so I think that's it, right? So I'm going to click delete hidden. For you guys, that should be under the geometry, subpalette, modify topology here, and delete hidden. So this one here. And now we have this separate mesh. I think we can go ahead and try to, with the similar, mesh these together, but yeah, let's try to do that really quickly. I don't know if it's gonna work because it's a bit messy, but we'll try it. So I'm gonna turn off symmetry. I don't want to deal with symmetry at this point, and I'm gonna click on bridge, edges, and I'm gonna start here. Click and click. Right, and the color right in the middle. We'll do that after. I'm just gonna complete this really quickly. I'm thinking I'm overdoing this, and to be honest, this is gonna be a Dynamesh ultimately, but again, just trying to show you some different processes. Come on, why is this? You know what? Because this is gonna be a Dynamesh, we can do a couple things. So I'm gonna center this. I'm gonna scale it down. You'll see why in just a second. Right. So the gap between these two planes is a little bit shorter. And then I'm gonna just Dynamesh this with a higher resolution, maybe more than that. Maybe more than that. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to scale it back up. Redynamesh. There we go. And I'm gonna assign a single polygroup. And let's bring back everything. I'm just gonna show you a technique that a retopology technique that you can use if you want to cleaner than what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm gonna scale this proportionally like so. So that's just gonna be that bit in there. Maybe a bit more. So that's kind of cool. But again, this is just the Dynamesh. So let's go into solo mode. And let's see the polyframe. And I think this is still, I can just do a bit more. So I'm going to increase the resolution even more. Dynamesh, that's great. And I'm going to run a clay polish just to sharpen. You'll see some of these edges here, they're not great. And yeah, a little bit blobby. So I'm going to clay polish that. Clear it. Maybe do another one. Clear that. And maybe just run a quick polish, just a normal polish. Alright, so if we want to use one of the new tools from ZBrush 2019.1.2, the Z-Remesh technique to remesh a hard surface model, I'm going to do that with this piece, not for all of them, but again, if you wanted to, you could do that. I just don't want to do it because, again, I want to go for I keep repeating myself, but I want to go for like a more organic stuff. So in this case, if you want to keep it, clean and do a nice topology, let's see if we can work on that. So the first thing that I would do is make sure that I have a series of polygroups that I can, basically a polygroup per each different plane that I want to maintain in the retopology. So this is kind of like the first step, helping Z-Remesher to understand what you want to do. Because you can click Z-Remesher and ZBrush for the most part will do a pretty good job. Let's just try that actually. So I'm going to make sure, I'm just going to click on half and do Z-Remesher. Let's do a quick save just before. Let's do a quick Z-Remesher and see what that gives us. So ZBrush is going to do a pretty good job giving you something by default that looks very good, and it's a working mesh. But if you want to have more control over this automated process, you have to combine the more manual input or what you want into ZBrush, so that ZBrush understands what you want to do basically. And then once you have given ZBrush that information, then it can run an automated process based on what you want. So yeah, so like you see here, it's a pretty decent topology. It did a pretty good job, and you can keep decreasing that. However, if you give it some more manual input, then ZBrush will have a better idea of what to do. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to undo that. And because in this case we have a pretty clear set or difference between the different planes, the easiest way would be to go to the polygroups, the polygroup palette, and I'm going to click on group by normals, this one here. So, well, in this case it didn't do anything, and that is probably because the angle, or the tolerance angle, is set to 45. So let's increase that. I think it should decrease it actually. That's too much. Okay, so that's gonna, it's not gonna be very obvious. Let's see. There we go. I think that's better. So I'm gonna click on this little dot here. I forgot what the difference in the algorithm is, but I know there's a difference. So let's do that again with maybe 18 degrees. So this max angle, I think I explained that in a few streams ago. This max angle is just gonna look at the difference of the angle between one plane and the next one. So basically, if I go into this area, this is kind of like the angle in this plane. So this, yeah, so this max distance, this max angle is gonna look at this and figure out, okay, if there is about this much difference between this plane and this plane, then this must be a polygroup and this would be a different one. So let's just tweak that a bit more, decrease the difference in the angle. There we go. All right, so that's kind of what I was hoping for. It's still not doing a great job. We can manually fix it, but I just want to give you something a little bit more automated. I'm going to give it a single polygroup and show you something else. So I'm going to show you two more things. One is a way to mask by plane and then manually assign polygroups, and then I'm going to show you polygrouping. See how well we time. Yeah, we have plenty of time to finish the block out of this gun. Let me just have a look at the chat. Hey, Steven is asking how you are you coming to the summit? I don't know at this point. I would love to, like, definitely, but I don't know right now, because I wanted to, yeah, I wanted to go there for a little while, more, like, definitely longer than when I went last year for like 7 days, whatever it was. But I don't know. I think I might have a project coming up in Europe, and I might go to the what's the name? Trojan horse was a unicorn, so in Malta, but I don't know. I would love to go to the summit again, but this is kind of like a paid gig, so we'll have to check. How far will you take this project? Will you be working on texturing as well? Maybe adding rust or wear and tear? Maybe one of the cylinders can be liquid, and I can show how to do transparent objects. Yeah, we'll have a look. Once, yeah, if there is interested in this project, I'll probably take it a little bit further. I don't wanna drag the projects too long into many streams, because I think, you know, if I work in different things, it's gonna be more interesting for more people. But we'll see. It's definitely within the realm of possibilities. Hey, Oliver. I'm late. Damn it. You, Pablito. Who's my? I'm gonna take a wild guess, and I'm gonna say that my could be either Puchos or Sopilot. But I don't know, and that's just a couple of my friends from Costa Rica. I don't know. Who are you, Mai? Who are you? Anyway, so the technique that I was going to show you is the Transpose Smart Transpose Mask, or Transpose Smart Mask. So it's a little tool that I don't see a lot of people using, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it's being here in your brushes all along, and it's this one right here, the Transpose Smart Mask. So when you select it, it's going to switch to the Gizmo. It's kind of like the transpose line, but if you turn off Gizmo, it gives you the normal transpose line, right? This is the normal transpose, so it's nothing different from the transpose, except that if you click and hold Control and click, it will mask based on the plane. So let me turn off polyframe. So I'm going to hold Control, click, and drag, and you'll see ZBrush is using this line, this is my line, to mask by plane, which is awesome. So you can just do this type of thing really quickly. So I'm going to do that. Now the great thing with this tool is that you can add like selections or add mask to the mask that you're creating. So you can hold Control and Shift and keep adding. And ZBrush is just restricting that mask to the to the plane, basically, that you start clicking on. Oops. Again, this is a more manual process, and if you have the time, you can spend doing it. All right. So that is one way to go about it, and of course you can clean this up a bit more. So I'm going to invert the mask just to show you how I would do it. So I'm going to mask in manually this part, and again, all of this is just so that we can have a better result with the C modeler. All right, invert that mask, and I'm gonna mask this like that. Cool. So now that we have this like this, we can go ahead and hold Control W, and that is essentially a new polygroup. Let's just do a different one. We do the this is the wrong one, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we can just do a mirror and well and fix that. Oops, mirror first and mirror and well. There we go. Okay, so you can go ahead and do the same thing for all of these other planes with the mask and have more control. So that's one way to do it. And the mask, the the Transpose Smart Mask is definitely an awesome tool. But I'm going to show you one more just before we still have time. So one more thing you can do to select different planes and assign different polygroups is use the Polygroup it. So I'm going to do a quick save again, because Polygroup it might, it's an awesome tool, but it's a separate thing. It just brings in a new window. So with this mesh selected, I'm going to go to Plugin, or see Plugin, and I'm going to click on, hang on, what am I going to do? Polygroup it. Polygroup it. So I'm going to click on Polygroup it. There we go. So this is our mesh. Whoops. It's all inverted. Okay, so here you can move in the same way that you do in ZBrush. But the difference is that you can go ahead and click in an area just to add. I'm going to use my mouse. So I'm going to click on an area, and it creates this little dot or this little seed, and then you have this slider that allows you to control the reach of the seed. So I'm going to increase that. You'll see how ZBrush basically assigns a color in there. So you can keep doing that in the different planes. So click here and click here, click here, click here. Those are going to be all different polygroups. Click here, 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 and one here at the back. There we go. So those are going to be all polygroups. Now, if you want to fix kind of like this border, you can go up ahead and click on the different seeds, and increase or decrease the reach. Right, so that's one way to do it. You can also do this grow or shrink. So grow, this one I'm probably gonna grow that as well a couple of times. This one as well. Oops. Grow. This is an automated way to do this, as in growing all of them, auto group and overlap, I think it is, or extend, I think it's extend. Yeah, so with extend, it just does it automatically. I think that looks pretty good. There's a different one here. So one thing you can do is just move this seed around, and you'll see it just changes. I'm gonna create another one here. And I have two different polygroups in here. So I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna select that one and increase the reach of that one. Just try to put it more in the middle. It doesn't matter, we can tweak that later, but it's just a really quick way to click OK, and it's a quick way to assign polygroups based on the planes. I mean, I'm spending way too much time in this particular piece. It's not going to be that impressive anyway, but yeah. So hopefully you can see the different techniques, and then you can apply them to the rest of the pieces if you wanted to. Oh my, from Mexico. No, sorry, it's just because that's how in Costa Rica, my, M-A-E, it's how you say kind of like mate, or how's it going, friend. So I thought you were from Costa Rica, and that's how my friends from over there talk. Great, so great to have you here, Mai. And yeah, there we go. So I think it just did it faster than what I was just waiting too long. So I have these two polygroups that we can fix by simply selecting one and the other, and then I can just manually, you know, separate those. So I'm gonna assign a polygroup there. Alright, so that is kind of what I want. So now that I have this, the next step for the series measure is to make sure that we have a cleaner line of polygroups. So one thing we can do is smooth by groups. So if I bring in my polish by groups, sorry, not smooth, polish by groups, it's just going to polish that line of groups. A bit more. Cool. There we go. That's it. So there's a few things here that you can, you know, spend more time fixing, but I think it's an alright starting point. I'm not gonna spend too much time in this one anyway. So in the series measure, let's turn on the line as well. We can go ahead and I'm probably gonna turn off adaptive. We don't need it. There's no too many variations in. There's no like crevices and stuff. So yep. So the next thing is keep groups. So keeping groups will tell ZBrush to try to maintain this group, and that's how we're gonna try to keep these edges. We're also gonna detect well, hard edges doesn't really matter. Keep creasing, we don't have any creasing. And smooth groups, we already manually smooth the groups, so we don't have to run this process. I'm gonna leave it at 1 and see what that gives us. And that's it. Let's go ahead and click series mesh. And this is the series mesh, the 3.0, like the latest algorithm for hard surface. So that is, it works for both. I just found that the hard surface, it's incredible for hard surface, but for more organic stuff, I prefer to still use the legacy. All right. So there we go. That's looking pretty decent. Let's go ahead and keep doing series measure. I have the half button enabled, so every time that I click series mesh, it's going to lower the amount. So here we have 66,000. Now we have half, 31,000. One more time. 15,000. Should have like 7,000 something now. 3,000 or something. There we go. And maybe one more. 1,000. So, you know, it's doing a pretty decent job. So if anything, we can just do this process with all the pieces and keep it clean. I'm gonna do one more. One more. Alright, not too much. Maybe this one is pretty good. So you'll see we have a pretty decent topology, actually. Very clean for hard surface. And yeah, so we can use that process for anything else. So I'm gonna get out of solve mode. Do a quick save because I kind of like that. Bring in the Gizmo, Gizmo 3D, and then just scale this a little bit. Cool. So we have about 20 minutes. Let's go ahead and do the rest of them. These parts relatively quickly. So for this one, it's gonna be already pretty much very organic. So we can start with a cylinder and then Sculptors, I guess. That's gonna be a good one. So let's go ahead and append or insert a cylinder. Rotate the Gizmo 3D. Rotate with the Gizmo 3D. And just gonna try to position that in place a bit like that. Alright, something like that. And then we can go ahead and select the move brush with an AccuCurve and also the smooth brush. That's fine. Let's hold shift. Select Sculptors Pro from this icon here at the top, and that's the one, also Symmetry, and that's the one that allows us to add some geometry. So just gonna do that, and then use the move brush to create these bits. Also we can turn on transparency and turn everything off except the piece that we're working on. Makes sense. Alright, so something like that. So pretty organic shape, but it looks cool. And I think it's gonna make an interesting contrast between the other pieces that are a bit more like, you know, planes and stuff, in contrast with this more blobby area. Okay, turn off this transparency. So there we go. We have that. That's kind of like one of the easiest ones. I'm going to duplicate this bit and do this area here at the top, which also could be some organic piece. So duplicate that, go to Gizmo, move it around. I'm going to squish that in a little bit, maybe rotate it around as well. Scale it. Alright, so with shift, smooth this out and use the move brush to shape it. The good thing about the Sculptors Pro in this case is that it maintains everything within, I mean, you don't have to worry about any type of topology at all. Just keeps everything very very fluid. Okay, this shape, I feel it has to be a bit more sharper around these edges. So this is not going to be visible, as in it should be, let's go in solo. Alright, so something we can do is bring in the Gizmo, select the modifiers, or the deformer, sorry, and I'm going to use the Flatten. Oh, I cannot use it because I have Symmetry on. flatten. There we go. And we can enable symmetry from the Gizmo deformer. So with this X, I'm just gonna turn that on. So you'll see it has 1 or 0. So well, it has 0, 1, and 2. So 2 is the one that I want. You'll see how the direction of this cone changes, and then I can just push this in like that and accept. That's it. So a bit more, a bit flatter here, but still I can go with this Sculptors Pro, maybe reduce the size of my brush so that it doesn't break this with larger polygons, so we maintain kind of like a bit of the sharpness here. That's it. Alright, let's bring back everything. It's looking good. And we can use the Gizmo to, maybe not the Gizmo, the move brush, and then place this a bit better. Alright. That's it. I think, there's going to be some gaps and some spaces here, but we'll do that with the booleans. Let's go ahead and do this part here really quickly. We still have time, so let's do this part quickly, and then the more primitive stuff and the trigger. So for that, I'm gonna append a duplicate. Anyway, I duplicated this part, so this is a duplicate, and like I showed you before, anything that you have selected, if you click Q cube, it's gonna turn whatever subtool you have into a Q cube. That's what I wanted. So let's center pivot, scale that down, move that in place. So this is going to be this piece here. Alright. Go into solid mode, bring in the C modeler, and I'm going to right click on the edge. I'm going to click bevel, and I'm going to bevel this like so. That's fine. And let's go ahead and work on kind of like this area. So I'm gonna, I forgot already how what's the shape like. Alright. We can probably actually bevel this as well a little bit, and this one as well. If you want to keep or maintain the same distance, once you do one process in C modeler, ZBrush is gonna remember the settings, so I can just click on this edge and it will be consistent. Alright, so I'm gonna tag these two with Alt and then click, and because I have the Q mesh selected, I can do a few things. So this is the normal extruding. If you hold Ctrl, it will extract that, or if you hold Shift, it's just gonna move it. So that's kind of like what I want. Alright. Alright, so that's pretty cool. And let's go ahead and create a kind of like a gap for this. So actually, before I create the gap, I'm gonna do a bit of beveling here. Right click, bevel. So just a little bit there, and click to repeat the same process at the bottom. And now I'm gonna tag these polygons here, and I'm gonna right click on the face, and I'm gonna select Inset. And then we have a few options in the Inset. Each polygon is just gonna create an inset for each face. So I want to insert the entire region. Right, so when I click, I get this shape, right? So just to give it a bit of thickness in there, cool. And now we have a single polygroup here that we can take advantage of using the Q mesh, polygroup all, and just push that down or back. All right. So that's looking good. Here we can put some cannon or something. I don't know. Something else that I might want to do is bevel this entire thing, this edge in the middle, a little bit, and then we can Control, click and drag to mask this, invert the mask, and use the Gizmo to maybe give it a bit. Oops. Hang on. Mask, invert the mask, and then scale that tiny bit, just to give it a bit of extra curvature in there. Right click, and yeah, so that's one way to go about it. We can make this shape a little bit more complex if we wanted to. So with the Alt key, I'm gonna click on Symmetry so that we work on both sides, and I'm gonna tag this polygons, these polygons here. And maybe the ones here at the bottom as well. And this is the type of thing that I said before that I like to kind of design in ZBrush. So none of these things, I mean, the basic shape is in the sketch, but none of these things are part of the original idea. So as I work on this, I just figure out things that might look cool, or they make more sense in terms of the functionality of design and things like that. And those are the artistic decisions that I make while sketching in ZBrush. So I'm gonna right click on this, make sure Q mesh selected, yes, click and drag, and then just add a bit of thickness or paneling effect on this area, just a little bit. All right, so that's it. Let's go back to our solo, bring in the gizmo, and then we can just squish this in like this. Right, maybe, just thinking it should be a little bit higher. There we go. We have some areas here, and that just could be primitive as well. Let's just do another one. I'm gonna duplicate, go to QCube, bring in the gizmo. So I'm gonna do this one really quickly because it's very simple. I mean, there's nothing new or interesting to show you here. Scale that up, not up, just like that. Scale in the y-axis, sorry. All right, and then we can just add a insert here. For this area, then select the gizmo, tag these polygons, and go into QCube, Q mesh, sorry, and that's it. I'm gonna hold Control and mask this point in here, so we can push that up. So nothing different from what I showed you before. Let's clear that mask and do a quick save. And let's go ahead and center that, turn off symmetry, center that again, and scale that down. I just noticed from this angle, this piece, we did the Sculptors Pro thing on this side, but not in this side. So we can flip it, so mirror that, because when we do the mirror and weld, it's going to do it from the left side into the right one, or positive to negative. Is it positive and negative? Yeah, positive and negative. So mirror and weld. That's it. Cool. So these other bits, these could be like primitives. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. We have most of the blocking done before we start, doing. Again, my idea with this stuff is almost like combining these shapes. So I'm just gonna. I started doing these shapes with the SimModeler and the techniques that I showed you, but ultimately I want to be able to combine, let's say, this blobby area with this plane, right? So the only reason I started with the original, the retopology or the series mesh is to have something easier to work with and not have like a blobby shape from the beginning, and so that when we Dynamesh and start sculpting these, then we have some pretty decent kind of like planes that we can maintain. All right, so let's do Quicksave, and let's do a very, we have a couple more things to do. So we have about 5 minutes. That's plenty, and I believe I can go over a bit. So we can do this one with a couple of cylinders. So this is going to be the same thing. This one is going to be also a Q-cube probably, and another cylinder there. All of these three could be the same thing, really. And this is going to be, like, if you look at this from front, right, it's going to look something like that. Well, that's what I was thinking. This is kind of like what the rays are going to be shooting from, or whatever. So yeah, so some primitives. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to append a cylinder. Actually, well, select that cylinder, and I'm going to turn that into a Q-cube, and then just do the trigger really quickly. Go into solid mode. See modeler, bevel, mask this, embed it, push it in like so. And yeah, so this is gonna be the trigger. Something really easy. Kind of works. Probably have to mask this. Oops. Mask this edge and push that in. Alright, so that's just another piece quick there. So the reason I created that cylinder and then turned it into a Q-cube is because I prefer to work on the cylinder separately, so we can do radial symmetry. So that's another technique I wanted to show. Quicksave. So all we have to do is go to the tool palette, click on cylinder. So this is not a polymesh, so it's still a primitive 3D. Again, you can work on a cleaner mesh, or you can use Sculptors Pro. So I'm going to reduce this count to maybe 16, and this one as well by 8. So we have kind of like a consistent size for the squares here. And now we can go ahead and click on Make Polymesh 3D, and we can work on the cylinder. So whatever that part of the arm of the gun is. So I'm going to scale that up a bit. Actually, I'm going to duplicate that first, so that way we have that initial shape for the other part, for the other cylinder. And yeah, that's it. This one is going to be pretty easy, pretty simple. And we can go ahead and select bevel, and I'm going to bevel this area here. Okay, and also here as well. Click at the bottom to maintain that, and maybe do it a couple more times here. And that's going to give us that sharper line. So if we use this dynamic subdivision, we get something like that. All right. We can use the C modeler to tag this. Right click, Q mesh, push that in. Insert a couple of edge loops here. Not entirely sure what this is going to be, but it could be like a tank of some kind of liquid. Edge bevel. So all of these are pretty basic stuff from C modeler. Alright, so I'm gonna maybe use these polygroups here to make sure that I have QMesh polygroup all. Maybe push them out just a bit. Click to duplicate the same action, and that's alright. Alright, so I think I'm gonna keep it simple like that. Once we start detailing, we can go into more complicated and add some details in there. But I think it's looking good. We can actually turn that into a Dynamesh straight away and just put it in there, but you know, we're just blocking it at this stage. So let's just do a couple more here. Just extrude this, insert, tag these polygons, click to extrude, add an insert mesh here, tag this polygon, whoops, tag these polygons, come on, tag these polygons. Alright, one at a time then. Tag the polygons with the Alt key, click to extrude, and this is kind of like the bar where, you know, it's connected to something. Just tagging all the polygons and click to put that in. Alright, so I'm not gonna detail this too much. That's it. So let's go ahead and copy this subtool, go to our working tool or mesh. Oh, this is a cool thing that I forgot to mention. You can have a plane, and this is another reason I didn't use the image plane, although you can completely do the same thing. But if you have a plane and you don't, in the plane you don't have the double on, you can still have a reference in one side, and in the other side is you won't see it. All right, paste, subtool, here's our cylinder. Go into the Gizmo, scale that down. And I'm not sure what the, I don't know. I'm just gonna try to go with what I had originally created here, but I'm thinking they could be like sticking on an angle rather than just being 2, so it'd be 4 in a way, sort of like that. So that's more interesting, I think. Right, actually we should mirror that so that when we mirror and weld it, it's going to be on the other side. And let's do mirror and weld. That's good. Duplicate that, and I'm gonna delete one so that I can have more control over the placement before I mirror and weld it. So delete hidden. Cool. So remember, this is just another copy of the cylinder, and this is the one that I'm gonna use in this area. I'm gonna mirror that. I just mirror it so that I have more control over how to place it. Alright, so starting to look a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and mirror and weld. We welded this point together. Don't know if I want that. Just gonna push that out a bit, just so that we can separate these pieces if we needed to later on. Alright, so that is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and do this piece with radial symmetry maybe, and the C-model, and we're gonna wrap it up there, guys. Are you all dragging to group? No, the all drag. Oh well, yeah, to group. So the all dragging is to tag polygons with a temporary polygroup so that you can use the polygroup all. Okay. So go back to the working cylinder thing, and I'm just gonna do the last main shape, and that's it. I think we did good progress today. All right, so this is going to be, you know what, I'm going to Dynamesh this, and I'm going to polish the entire thing like so. There we go. And then I'm gonna bring in a clay brush, and this is kind of like one of the process that I'm gonna use most of the time when we get to refine all the shapes. So I'm gonna enable symmetry, make sure radial symmetry is on in the y-axis, because you know the y-axis is this one here, and then I can just increase the radial count to 32, something crazy, so that it's way faster and easier. And for you guys, all these menus are within the transform palette here, right here. So all of these ones, this is basically what I have here. All right. So with the clay brush, I'm just gonna start sculpting. So this is literally just sculpting details, but we have radial symmetry, so it's really quick to produce something interesting. And we have Dynamesh. We can probably increase the Dynamesh resolution a bit. Control click and drag through Dynamesh and smooth everything. So all the brushes will work in symmetry, which is great. All right, let's go ahead and do kind of like an area there that we can use later on as well. And I'm just gonna flatten this a bit, holding Alt just to push that in. Let's clean this up a little bit because it has all the faces, or is faceted from the original poly, what is it? Primitive 3D. All right. So this is pretty, I mean, this is super relaxing. To be honest, this is really cool technique just because it's fun to do using radial symmetry. Okay, so I mean, not only that, you can also let's go ahead and smooth these before anything. We can bring the damp standard brush, right, and do the same thing. Just to polish these corners. Oops. I'm just accentuating those edges so that when we use something like the clay polish or the edge polish, ZBrush is going to respect those edges a little bit better. So that's really, really handy. So that's it. That's just clay polish. You see we have a pretty decent, pretty polished surface. Alright, so I'm going to also, add something here that looks a little bit more interesting. Right, damp standard brush. And we can do something, let's go ahead and, let's just reduce the brush size and do kind of like a pattern in here. All of this is going to be overridden when we actually start refining this properly, but it's good to have it there. Another thing you can do is keep playing with these, but reduce the poly count to, let's say, 4 or 5, I don't know, maybe. Working with odd numbers might be interesting, so let's just do 3 or 5. Let's do 3. Let's do 6. I'm just thinking like from an angle, it might be hard to see the 3 points, but 6 is okay. So the same thing, we go with a clay brush, and we can just do a little detail here. And this all can be done as well with alphas, so you don't have to sculpt it, you can just drag any alphas in that you want. Alright. Cool, and then edge polish. Just polish that out. And then we can use the clay brush again, holding Alt to invert the effect. And then this is something that we can use like a bolt or something to put in there. I don't know. I mean, I'm just playing around with the shapes and not, I'm not doing anything too thoroughly at this point. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll just replace it with something. Increase dynamic resolution, that we can keep some of these details when I re-Dynamesh. And I'm just going to smooth this out a bit. Just do a quick save just in case. Clay brush. All right. So something like that. All right. So let's go ahead and just finalize this stream today. Copy subtool, go to our working mesh, paste subtool, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off symmetry, rotate this around maybe 130 degrees, scale that maybe up a bit. And this is what I'm not too worried about like the details and all that, because if I want to scale these just because it looks better, things that are like rounded is just gonna be stretched, or they're gonna be stretched, so they're not gonna work. So just want to make sure that this works overall, the shape, like the primitives and the primary shapes. This is quite small in the design, but I think I like this to be kind of like in line with this detail here and be a little bit more bulky and big. So I don't mind that. It's actually quite cool. So it's looking good. Let's go ahead and turn this off. And I mean, there's a couple of extra details that we could do, but I'm gonna leave it there. I think it's a good blocking. And then next stream we're going to start like, you know, merging things together, Dynamesh it, and you know, I'll bring some other stuff to show you. But I think we're good. I'm going to turn this also, just look at it from a different angle. Alright, so there you have it. Let's go ahead and do a render and see if we can see it. Turn off floor. There you go. So this is today's stream. Pretty basic shapes, but hopefully you can see a variety of shapes, and not variety of shapes, a variety of tools and processes that you can use to get something like this very quickly. And this is again just the initial state, and then next stream what we do is, you know, start polishing things and maybe show you different techniques. But for the most part, it's going to be a more relaxed kind of like sculpting. Similar to what I show you with the rounded thing in the front. All right, so yeah, I don't know if you guys have some last minute questions, something related to what I showed you today, or something completely unrelated, doesn't matter. And if I can answer it, I'm happy to. Otherwise, we'll leave it here. Este ha estado para tener que verlo un par de veces, está genial. Thanks, Harry. Harry's saying that this might have to be a rewatch as well. Comics Legend, how often do you use layers when sculpting? Not morph target, but layers with recording, and then you can mess with the opacity of the sculpt. Very often, if I'm doing like a character, like for the, you know, pores and high frequency details, that's it's fantastic. I don't use it for like primary secondary shapes as much. I would use layers to like have all the pores in one, and then do a micro pass of micro detail surface in another layer, and maybe some noise in the other one, and then I blend them all together. That's how I would use, or that's how I use layers most of the time. I also use them a ton when I'm setting up the initial kind of like a silhouette of a character. If you go ahead and look for the summit presentation that I did last year, I went over how I use the layers for that part. So that might give you also an idea of how to use those. And it's in YouTube. Just type my name and Summit 2018, and in that kind of like presentation, I go over how I use those layers. Chao, is that a plugin you use to copy and paste subtools? No. So that is because I'm using the Wacom. A Wacom Cintiq. So if I press, I have a custom menu mapped to one of the buttons here of my pen. So those are tools, or those are settings that I don't use as often to have them, you know, to warrant have them in the UI. So I just bring them up with this, and I have a few. I have group visible, duplicate, all high, all low, shrink mask, you know, things that I would use eventually, or every now and again. And these are things that you can just customize per application. So I have a similar set of menu for Photoshop, a different one for Keyshot, a different one for, you know, different Substance Painter, different software. You can create these custom menus with the Wacom, and it's the same thing as the control. So I have a few keys mapped to my control. So I created a couple of UIs, custom UIs called My Tools and Brush Stuff. So Brush Stuff is just this custom palette, and this My Tools is another custom palette. So if you press one of the keys in the control, it'll bring this palette so that I can access the things that I use most of the time. Same thing as the brushes that I use most of the time as well. So it's just customizing UI to improve the workflow, I guess. That's it. All right, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. It's been great. So I think this one will take it as as further as it's interesting. I guess once we lose the interesting in this one, we'll just drop it, do something else. But yeah. So hopefully you enjoyed today, and I'll see you. I'm not sure if the schedule for next month is gonna be the same. I hope it is, but I have to double check. But I would think it's going to be the same. So I'll see you next week. If nothing changes, I'll let you know in social media. I'll just put a link in there. Alright guys, so take it easy and I'll see you next week. See ya.